Hello, Pinky. Hello, Chip. How are you?
Great. Lovely to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to see you.
Fantastic today, and really appreciate both of you making time. I'm excited for today.
What was it about Pinky that you found so inspiring, Chip, that you wanted to invite her onto the podcast? Because I know you saw her in Madrid. You came back all excited. Tell us all about it.
So I don't want to give away her secret sauce. I'll let her do that. But for me, what it was is I had the chance with my wife to spend a little time with Pinky during a cocktail event and just chit chat, and then got to listen to her talk. And really, at the end of that talk, I wish that I could have gathered together every woman that I know in the world and brought them in and had them listen to that. It was so motivational and so well done. There was great content around what I'm going to call some intellectual discussion that seldom is had properly, and great conversation around the conduct, the way in which we conduct ourselves. It was just so good, and her story is so engaging. I was hungry afterwards. She'll tell you about that too. But it was that's what really did it for me. Is I thought, how can I project her out to all the women that I know in the world? And thought, well, why don't she'll do a podcast? And then she's made time for us.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really interesting idea looking at the sort of way we behave instead of what we do, because I think in working life, we just focus on what we do all the time rather than thinking about the way we do it. So I'm really interested to hear what you say as well, Pinky. So what were the key concepts that you shared in Madrid?
I really spoke about my journey, and I think that's what lends it some credibility because everybody has such different journeys. And thank you for the wonderful comments you've made about me, Chip. They say the greatest human craving is the craving to be appreciated, and you've said that in tone just now. So thank you for that. Yeah, the real, what I shared with everybody was the journey and what led me to where I am. And if I have been successful, what has helped me and how I can share it with others. And it really varies from, if you can dream it, you can do it, to a point where all of us can fail, but you must never give up.
Oh, that's great. And you have a sort of 7 Qs, don't you, that you talked about. What were the 7 Qs? Can you explain that to us as well?
Yes, for me, where everyone's looking for shortcuts to success. So whenever I speak, people want to go away with something they can write. And I came up with this a few years ago. And the first one, obviously, is IQ. We all know that. And EQ, that's been very much in the public domain. The AQ is very important, your attitude quotient, because we all like people who have the right attitude, and we all have different attitudes at different times, but it's important to be aware of it. The MQ in people's life, the meaning quotient, if they don't really have any meaning in what they do, then they're going to find it really difficult. The CQ.
So is that the motivation? Just to expand on that. So it's looking for something that makes you feel good in the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely has meaning for you. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. It has to have real meaning. If you're just doing it to earn money or something like that, it's not going to work the same way. And so the meaning quotient. And then the CQ, I used to call that communication quotient before, but about a year ago, I changed that because I found what really was on my side was a huge amount of curiosity. So the CQ has become curiosity and courage. I think we all need that. And I think curiosity plays a huge part in my life. As I've got older, I still want to learn. And that's important for me. And the LQ, I love the LQ. It's your likability quotient. So, it's so important to be liked, and we can speak more about that later, but likability is so important. And the final one is the KQ. As you all know, kindness lies at the heart of everything I do. I have a mantra, and my mantra is you have not lived a perfect day unless you've done something for someone who can never repay you.
Oh, she's lovely.
So it's really very, very, and the great thing about kindness is that anyone can be kind. You don't need a qualification. You don't need to have certain assets. We all have the ability to be kind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to come back to that likability Q, actually, because I think this is something that women try very hard to be. particularly in the workplace. They want to please, and they want people to like them. And I think it's something I know I've experienced going through my career. And at some point, you do have to stop worrying about being liked and pleasing in order to make good decisions. How do you balance the sort of being good at your job with that likability?
I think for me, likability is being the best version of yourself. So, authenticity is important, being respectful, listening to people, asking questions. That's what makes somebody likable. And there's a wonderful story of Jenny Jerome, who was Churchill's mother. And when she came here, she apparently went out one night with Disraeli for a dinner, and the next night with Gladstone, who were both, candidates for being Prime Minister. And when she came out with Gladstone, she said when she was with him and she came out, she thought he was the cleverest man in the world. With Disraeli, she came out thinking she was the cleverest person in the world. And so that makes you so much more likable. So I think, everybody can be likable in a certain way, and you can make those judgments and and portray them.
Excellent. So, Chip, which was your favorite cue out of those?
It was hard to pick, right? Because for me, one of the things I always like is the attitude quotient. I think attitude is something that's really, really under our control. We choose what we happen to. We choose how we happen to things. What happens to us is lots of times out of our choice. But I always think about that. But I'll tell you the thing that I was thinking about as Pinky was talking about the meaning quotient and the curiosity quotient is that it seems like those two are what I would call the spice for life, right? If you're doing something meaningful, and if you have this curiosity and this courage about the meaningful things you're doing, it just seems like that is a life that is anything but bland, right? That is spicy, it is flavorful. That seems like, out of these things, that in particular is something that really drives the personal satisfaction for what we're doing. It keeps us young, it keeps us energized, keeps us active. So that's what I was thinking about.
You took the 7 cues in Madrid and you put them into a recipe for success, didn't you? So do you want to talk us through what that recipe is that we can follow to have success in our working lives?
Well, I think really with, being the best version of yourself, doing things you love. So for instance, for me, when I wrote my first book, and I rang up the booksellers and says, how many will you take? And they said, are you on television? Are you a celebrity? Are you well known? And I said, no, it was a recipe book called Spice Magic. So nobody wanted any. So you have to be creative, innovative. And I didn't want to give up because I had these thousands of copies. So I actually told one of the bookshops in central London, I said, I can bring my electric wok and make spicy Bombay potatoes in 5 minutes. Will you let me sell my book? And out of the 20 people asked, one felt sorry for me and said, fine, I'll also serve some wine so that if somebody doesn't like your potatoes, they can have the wine. But I went along, and it was a huge success because I just took everything there, had my spice box, and people started buying the book. So I traveled around England with my wok and my spice box.
That's
so
super.
It was again, and I have to share this with you. When I came to England many, many years ago, I'd met my husband, married him in India in 3 weeks. He lived in England. He had done no due diligence whatsoever. He thought he'd got a good wife who could cook. I had never been inside the kitchen because we had one of the best chefs in Calcutta, so I'd never cooked in my life. And I love people. That's the best version of me, is I love having people over. And I had to learn to cook. And when I learned to cook, again, it's taking risks. Somebody said, and I love inviting people. So whoever I meet, I say, come to my house for lunch. And one of the girls said, will you teach cookery to adults and we'll pay you? And they paid me £11 an hour for 2 hours, which is nothing. But I went along, and that's how I developed people's interest in cookery, wrote my book, and the wok traveled everywhere. It's probably been to hundreds of corporates, including the Bank of England. It's actually, when I speak about leadership, I take the wok. So I think, in that journey of the 7 Qs of success, being the best version of yourself, having passion, really believing that you can help people and inspire them. I know, Chip, when you say you work with people who are having difficulties, it's so important to make them feel good about life, to give them hope. for the future. And if
Mm.
I can tell people, you know, I've gone into places where you wouldn't expect me to be. I mean, another very good story, I think, I love telling stories because that's what gives it credibility. But about 12 years ago, my younger son said he wanted to do his MBA at Oxford. And I said, I'll come with you when you're looking around. So when he went to decide business school, he went looking around, and I went inside the office and said, what do you guys do for women? So they kind of looked at this middle-aged Indian woman and said, what do you do? So I told them what I did. Well, he got in, so I was so happy, and I got a call from them to say, would I be the keynote speaker on the first day of term to the women who were joining? So I went along with my walk and actually told my son, don't tell any of the women, because if I make a mess, nobody will go out with you. But he actually married one of them. And so, you know, yeah, you can take, so my walk has been from academics to the corporate world. So you can do anything you really set your heart on.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that you said in your recipe for success in Madrid was to leave your signature. Do you feel that that sort of doing that walk and showing kindness through food left your signature, or is there other ways that you think people can do that in their work?
I think you can in other ways too. I think that did, but I think if you appreciate people, if you have humility instead of being arrogant, people enjoy that. So that's important. And I think you constantly have to look at new things that you can do. I think innovation in whatever you do, find out if you're good at it and help people to explore what's good about them. And the other thing, which I think makes nice for people, people love meeting others. And if we can all open our network, open doors for people, it can change lives.
Some of the things you've talked about to us are easy when things are easy. How does somebody apply those concepts in a really difficult situation, like some of the things that Chip and his and the women in his team, because he has a lot of women in his team, face daily in dealing with people who are really struggling or aren't being particularly honest?
I think it's very important to have a good network, a good good people around you, because all of us have challenges. Sometimes we don't know all the answers, but asking others and sharing for people to be open, I think that's so important, because often when you're in a difficult situation, if there's no one to assist you, it can be absolutely, it really brings out the worst in you. So having somebody else to look at it, open your mind to new ways of solving the problem is very important.
So, Chip, can you see these concepts being applied in your workplace and with your own team?
Well, for sure. I mean, one of the things that endeared Pinky to me is that there's a charm in everything that she's talking about, and I think that ability to be charming is something we see in a lot of very successful people. You think about some of the world leaders who have charm. Sometimes the charm's an acquired taste, but but oftentimes they've got a very unique charm about them. It's that memorability, it's that likability, and I think about that as you deal with these difficult circumstances. Whenever you're in challenging situations with people who are under stress, you can have it at where everybody's under stress, right? Everybody's just at their worst version of themselves. Or as Pinky says, if we're working very hard to be the best version of ourselves and we insert that part into the equation, even if the other folks are at the worst part or somewhere close, it's a significantly better environment for everyone than if we just all decide to be our worst selves. And so I think that's really part of what I take away from Pinky is, you think about, and again, she's got so much more to her story, and we could go on listening to her forever, but her charm, the things that she has done, there's been adversity along the way. Not everything is easy. Not every place is easy. Not every culture is as easy. But I think, the charm and the message that Pinky has, that's what makes the progress everywhere she goes.
One of the things that you love as well is working as a team, isn't it, Pinky, and really putting the team together around you. Obviously Chip wants to use these 7 Qs with his team. Have you got any advice for Chip on how to improve his team?
Well, I think I'm just so inspired and impressed by him that I could give him a few pieces of advice. He probably knows everything and probably more than I do. But I think, if we can see further, it's because we stand on the shoulders of giants. So therefore, when you're looking to inspire others, there's so much others people, who are from different backgrounds can treat you. And I think what's really important also for people with difficulties is trusting something, trusting the people they work with. Therefore, I always talk about the values that when I'm dealing with people, when you talk about a team, if I don't trust the people in that team, if they don't have integrity, if they don't have humility, and they don't really care, I'll stay away from them. And I think that's what's important for people when you're having difficulties, is you want people who can help you on that journey, who believe in you.
So do you think that's also a good basis upon which to recruit? So when you're looking for a team member, that as well as looking at their skills in what they can do in terms of their technical skills, that we should be looking for people with integrity and honesty. I'm not sure. I don't know, Chip. Do people still look for those things in workplaces? Or I think we get very focused on what they can do rather than how they do it. Do we?
So what's really interesting to me is I think about, Pinky's story of coming into a marriage. And, if you had interviewed her at the moment to say, hey, can you cook? You get a lot different answer than where Pinky ended up. And so one of the things is I think about that question back is, there's a nature and a nurture part that comes into all of this. And I think, sometimes you have folks who, they have certain morals and ethics because that's where they've been. That's where they've been situated at. And I do think there's a nurture too, where you can also have a fantastic environment that allows people to become the best version of themselves. They may not start there, but the real question isn't, can I go find a bunch of people who are already there? The real question, I think, is how do I have an environment where I can take people who aren't there and help them get closer or all the way there?
I totally agree with you. And, you were asking the question that we recruit people, whether they can do the job. Well, I'm slightly different. I look at the picture of, do I trust them? Do they have the values that are important for me? And it may make my journey more difficult, but I will stick to that. The two women who work with me have been with me for 16 years, and they're really young. And that's important for me because I wouldn't be able to work with someone I don't trust. And I think you have to decide. Everybody has different ways. But I think there are always things that go wrong and always things but I can say with the two women who work with me, nothing has ever gone wrong because they have got all the values that I think are important.
And I think that's where a lot of stress comes in the workplace, is when you're not sure how people are going to respond in certain situations when everyone's put under pressure.
So one of the things, Pinky, that I was thinking about is, you have seen a lot, and I sort of wonder, I think about the people you influence, and I think, there's the veterans, there's the folks in the middle of their career, and the folks who are just getting started. And I wonder if you have the same advice for all three groups, or if you have some slightly different thoughts for people in those particular positions in life.
I think for people who are starting out, you have to give them encouragement, take risks, climb new mountains, try new things, talk to, everyone with the people who've been there in the middle. They've already had experiences, so as to hear how they're going and guide them there. And the people at the top, everybody, Chris, we all know everybody rises and falls. That is in everybody's career. You see, our Alison Rose, who was the head of NatWest here, incredible woman, but she's had to resign from her job. So everyone, even the great people, have ups and downs. I think people who are senior, they've had their ups and downs. Sometimes I love asking them their stories because I think hearing the stories then teaches me and tells me to say something more to the people I don't, who are just starting. So I think there's a real amalgamation there. And what we love to do is to give people opportunities they've never had. So for instance, one of the things we do a lot of is, because I run the Women with Future Awards, I try to open as many doors for them. So this year in June, we took 30 of them to number 10 Downing Street for a visit. And some of them were like, oh my God, I've never been to Downing Street. It changed my confidence, my belief in the world. And we sent 30 people to Buckingham Palace for a tea party, which was a very big one that the King hosted. And it kind of changed their lives. I didn't go to that, but I could see how it made people, very much more passionate about their belief, their vision. So I think we need to work in different ways with different people.
Going back to the mentoring point you made earlier and combining it with what you've just said, do you feel that we perhaps lose some of that mentoring, and actually it's that gives people confidence and the ability to progress, and that perhaps that's something we all need to focus on a bit more, is bringing people up and supporting them?
I think mentoring, it's again, there are lots of people who believe they need a mentor, that they can only progress with a good mentor. I myself, I haven't officially had a mentor, but I've just been inspired by other people's stories, by hearing about them. And I think it really depends on the person and their journey. If they need a mentor, then I think we should make sure we give them access. But if they don't, everyone doesn't always want somebody guiding them. They look somewhere else. So I think we have to be open to that. That's my view on it.
You talked about network as well, in your sort of recipe for success. So if you don't have a mentor, do you think having that really strong network and building a network around yourself is important?
I think it's of primary importance. The thing that's helped me on the journey is because so many people have given me, answers to questions I have. So your network, and it's really important to have a varied network. And so it shouldn't just be, if you're in finance, just shouldn't be people in finance. I think cross-sectoral networks are the most powerful because you learn different things from people in different professions. So I think that is absolutely paramount to success.
Do you see a difference? I mean, going back to Chip's sort of excellent point about the different bits in career, do you see a difference with younger people in that these days they spend so much time on their phones, and we all know that some find it quite hard to pick up the telephone and have those interactions. And I know my own kids find that quite uncomfortable these days because they prefer texting. Are you seeing that younger people find it harder maybe to establish those networks because of being quite digitally dependent?
I think with the work I do, because I run the Women Future, they realize that networks are really important. So whenever we're having anything that brings people together, they're all queuing up to come because they've learned how important it is and how it can help them on the journey. So I don't have an issue with that. One of the things I do a lot of is twice a month, I host a lunch at my house for 35 women who don't know each other. And they all queue up to come because they meet people very diverse. So I think, again, when they see the value of something, they'll be there like a shot.
In all the work that you've done, what's been the most difficult situation that you've seen your principles applied to?
I think what people find difficult when they're not succeeding, whatever it is, and for me, the challenges have always been, how do I make my business a success? And a lot of the people I meet may at that time be going through a difficult time, and those are the challenges. And to give them hope, to give them belief, that's so important, to really believe in what you're doing, to give them a vision and to give them support. I think that is the real challenge for people because everybody has ups and downs. And I don't think you should ever give up. That is the most important thing, I think, in our lives, that we always must believe we can. Failure doesn't matter. You need that to succeed sometimes. So that's important.
So one of the things that struck me about going back to the cues is the courage quotient. And you talked about never giving up and stick toing it through failure. But I think that also applies into the networking. The thing about courage is stepping outside of the space that you're in. And so I wonder if you just have a comment or two about you've obviously had an incredible amount of courage, knocking on doors that nobody else might knock on, and all that. I just wonder if you'd comment on that, because I think the courage quotient is one of those things that, for some people, they have plenty of courage. Other folks are like the lion from Wizard of Oz.
I think, courage takes into account things like to be creative, to be innovative. That's how you get courage, to do something you've never done. And know that even if you don't succeed, you can try another way. And I think that's important. If you don't want to take any risks, you're never going to succeed wholly, and you're never going to go down a different area. I love the fact that, you know, I've had to lecture on leadership. I've had to cook in front of hundreds of people. And if I didn't have the courage, if I thought, oh my God, it's not going to work, I'm going to fail, I would never have done it. And there have been times where it hasn't worked, but I've learned from that too. So I think it's having that ability to see if it hasn't worked, how can I make it work?
If you've got a situation where you have a very difficult person and they're perhaps, like Chip comes across, they are dishonest, what advice would you give to somebody in dealing with somebody like that while still trying to maintain your own integrity and principles and kindness? Because that's quite a challenge.
Yeah, I can believe that. That must be so difficult. But I think if you want them to succeed, if you want to succeed, if you want things to work out, you have to keep trying to make them be honest. And it may not work, but I think you have to still try it a few times, give up when it absolutely doesn't. But you have to keep trying. And that's challenging. But I think you learn from that. Even in that, there's so much that comes out. So I would never give up until I kind of think there's no way it's going, so I'm going to give up. But I would hate to do that.
I really appreciate it, Pinky. I appreciate you coming on. So I say, I think you're an inspiration. I think that your stories are applicable. So many people can take away so many elements. You know, again, whether it's the intellectual understanding of the cues, whether it's the emotional and almost spiritual guidance. And you know, I hear you say never give up, and I hear Winston Churchill in the background, and I just I think, you know, the character is the similar part of the things. And I think, you know, the charm that you exude, the character that you exude, the steadiness, it's just so great, so refreshing, so rare, and I really appreciate you sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be asked, and I'm always wanting to learn new things. So I've learned a lot while having this conversation with you guys too. So thank you.
Oh, it's been absolutely lovely to see you, Pinky, and also you, Chip. So thank you so much for taking part today, and we'll talk soon.